Okay, we're continuing the series, trying to understand what we call the sins of Genesis and how they all connect. This is Lamaisa. Just before we go further, the basic idea of seeing all the sins of Genesis as a progressive, or rather regressive relationship with God is a Mefurish Midrash. I'm going to read the Midrash for you at the moment, and then we'll see how these all connect. The Medrash is in Parshas. You don't have it in front of you. I just decided to bring it up now. It's in Parshas Noach on the pasuk in Medrash Tanchuma. It's Os Chaf Aleph. It says about Yehi kol ha'aretz safa achat. We're talking about the Migdal Bavel, that all the whole, whatever the land there was, where the people which had moved to Shinar, they all had one language. Amar Shlomo said in way, Im tichtoshet avil b'machtesh, if you take a fool and you pound him with your pistol and your mortar, lo tasumi alavi balto, you can pound them from today to tomorrow. Klugvet nicht veru. You know, you can. The cloud is, the pasuk says, "Let's takeh upeti yarim." A cynic who doesn't have das, he's an avil. You know, you can hit him, but he's not going to become kluger. Who can become wise? The person which is a pesi, he's the fool, so he learns mussar. But a person which is not out to seek truths, rather he has another agenda. You can hit him, nothing's going to happen. So he says, "What is this pasuk?" I'm going to read this to you now. He says, Mashal Amad Davar Daima, that's intended Gavim, a bottle full of grasshoppers. Allah Rishon v'nafal, the first one tries to get out of the glass, and he falls down. No, so what happened? The second one learns from that. Abeis, the second grasshopper gets up, also jumps down and falls. Hashini v'nafal, Hashlishi v'nafal. Shlishi lo lamad min hasheni. The third one didn't learn from the second one. Hashini lo lamad min harishon. Kach amdu doroshel enosh. So too, the generation of Enosh, they were there. Karub shmo shakadosh baruch hu la'avodah zarah. They decided to introduce paganism into the world. Shneimar, and he brings the pasuk. As it's in Bereshis Perik Daled, it's pasuk Chav Vav. As huchal likro b'shem Hashem. Rashi writes it's lashon chulin. This is Enosh. Enosh, the son of Shais, the son of Adam Arishon. He chooses basically to turn his back on God and to see and to get and put in the intermediaries, which we will explain soon what it was doing over here. What did God do? There's something which many people are not aware of. They say Medrash found it also in Rabbah and also in Tanchuma. Kara Kadosh Baruch Hu Kara Yam Okeanus Vitziv Shlisho Shel Olam. And he flooded a third of the world. It's interesting to see in Medrash Rabbah. What does it mean, a third of the world? It doesn't mean Africa and Australia. It means say Ad Akko or something like that. The Gemara there, the Medrash there describes areas within the Mediterranean basin. So you understand, we're not talking about the whole world. When we say Olam, we mean the inhabited civilized world at the time. It's a very important key to understand when we say Olam. So we say Kola Yikum, Kola Olam. We're talking about the inhabited area of people of the Bible. That's it. You'll see the Medrash. If you want to look it up, it's in Perik Lamed Ches, I think in Medrash Rabbah. You can see it there. So here it says, She Sipsh Lisho Shel Olam. He reacted with a flood. Then it says, Dora Mabul Amru Lakel Sur Mimenu. Once again, he translates also the corrupt behavior of Dora Mabul, licentiousness and the works and theft, not to some kind of a taiva story, but was all a reaction of similar like Dorshel Enosh. Amru lakel sur mimenu. God, walk away. We're not interested in living with you in front of our eyes. V'lo lamdu midor enosh ad shemacha zichram. This, the Tao God did not just destroy a third of the inhabited world, he destroyed the total inhabited world. I say that with a purpose. Dora Palaga, Lo Lamdu Midorot Rishonim. Once again, the Medrash says that the same sin of Lamar Lakel Sur Mimenu, God, bug off, walk away, let us live our lives, was reflected in three different types of generations, but the basic common denominator was man trying to walk away from God, run away from God, turning your back on God in one way or the other. And again, what happened? This is exactly it. This is the same fool. You pounded him once, you pounded him twice, you pounded him 3 times, and I land fish. It's like the 3 grasshoppers. Here you have a Mefurish Medrash Tanchuma that we have to look at all the sins depicted in Parshas Bereshis and Noach as one tzura, as one man running away from God with different variants, not to look at them particularly A versus B versus C, but seeing the common denominator. It's because of that I started last time to explain what exactly happened in Eden. If you recall, we saw, I didn't read it inside, but you had the Bar Malka based on Mur and Nevuchim, that what happened was that when Adam was created, you remember in that parsha, the name of God is Yud K Vav K Elokim. And we discovered, we learned that Yud K Vav K is the God, reason of creation, the primary force of creation. Elokim is already taking energy and making it form. One would say the dynamo of energy, which is creation, is expressed in the name Yud Kei Vav Kei. Elokim is now for form. This is a Ramban, where the Ramban writes in Parshas Bereshis bar Elokim es Hashemayim v'es ha'aretz, that God took infinity and created a certain two major energies. One is called Shemaim, is one called Oretz, and that's all he did of making ex nihilo from naught into something. Afterwards, he was using a cookie cutter, and for the next 6 days, he was do this, do that. Basically, he's taking that primary energy and giving it different forms. The God of form is Elokim. Elokim means not just judgment; it means the idea of order, system, gvura, constriction, restriction, borders, giving it specific finite forms. So when we talk about God being the one who puts out form, we call him Elokim. When we talk about God, the source of the primary energy equals what? As we learned in the Ramban and Parshas Yisrael, that he is Hoveh Kadmon, Shimimeno Hakol, Bechefzo, Ubiyacholto. That's what the word means. And that's how, when Adam was created, that's how he saw reality. He didn't see reality as a horse. He understood horse is a form of expression of the infinite God in energy. So, he constantly saw God's Ma'aseh Yodav Shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu in the Bria. We don't even see physics. We don't see energy and form. We just see a horse. We are very, we live in very non-intelligent language. We don't even see what it really is in science. That's good for the books. We see what it does for us. A horse I can ride, a table I can sit there, eat on, a book I can read. You're looking at how you use it and not looking at what it really is. Adam was more intelligent. And he saw Yud Kei Vav Kei Elokim. Not only did he see form, he saw physics, or rather metaphysics. He saw form of energy, and he saw the source of energy expressed in that form. Now, when you live that way, you can't exactly see anything else, because it's like when you see the pure truth, so you can't give it other interpretations. When you know exactly what it is, then you can't say it's something else. You can't look at the at oxygen and say, "Oh, this is carbon." It don't work. Okay, it's oxygen. You know what the word oxygen means. Okay, this is gas A versus gas B. Well, when you look at water, water, that could be Coca-Cola, Pepsi-Cola, then it really depends what's for yourself. But when you look at the science, it doesn't matter. Pepsi-Cola, this cola, Yenicola, this is water plus X amount of gas plus X amount of whatever chemistry there is there for that food coloring. This can go enough to say the least. Okay, if you would look at the forms, you probably wouldn't. If what it really is, you wouldn't drink it. That's the honest truth. We would all be a bit slimmer if we would simply live with science versus with our imaginative eyes. So at the end of the day, Adam Arishon was used to seeing Yud Kei Vav Kei Elokim. The encounter with the Nachash we learned last 2 weeks ago. The Nachash, the first one, which introduced to Chava the idea of looking at Elokim without Yud Kei Vav Kei. We saw 3 psukim in that parsha, and she acquiesced. She liked the idea. It didn't take if I look at this as a totally subjective reality. Stop thinking about the energy behind it. Don't think about the creator. Look at the book. Once you look at the book and you don't look at the author, then you can give interpretation to the book or the piece of art or anything, whatever you want. It's subjective. And this is what the Rambam writes. The Rambam writes that the dialogue between the serpent and Eve, that was the point of sin. The point of sin is because she acquiesced to see not objective truths, but a subjective reality, and therefore she could make interpretations of whatever it is, how she wants. She stopped looking at emes and sheker, and she started seeing toiv li barali. What does that mean? Stop seeing what it is, but rather what it is for me, a subjective reality. Even the form, let alone, and I'm not talking what we're holding, which is much less than that. This is what the Rambam writes. It's only after they fell into emes and toiv barali, into subjective thinking. As we see immediately, what does she say? She saw this as a taiva, nechmad, subjective terms, and then she ate it. So the reason of the downfall is not the eating, but actually the dialogue with the serpent, which, as the Gemara says in 2 places, hitul ba'zoyama, he basically infused her with a pollution. Where is that seen in the Mikra? In the Mikra, it's seen where the Nachash tells her, Elokim, cutting away the word Yud Kei Vav Kei. So this is what happened. Now, this is where we're holding. One has to understand, how would you feel if you were Adam, and then all of a sudden, you were used to seeing Yud Kei Vav Kei, you're seeing the author in the metaphysics in the form, and all of a sudden, all they see is a dumb apple. You see, originally they were going to where is the world that I was in 5 minutes ago? Where am I? It's like a person which is at the peak of perfection, of wisdom, and all of a sudden he's a kindergarten child. And he's a mature person, for goodness sakes. This man was in a terrible trauma. And that's what the Pasuk describes when the Pasuk says that they realized, that's what the Pasuk says, they realized they were nude and they put some fig leaves to cover their nudity. It means they realized this is, beforehand they weren't nude, but beforehand they looked at this as the agenda of creation. This is energy of God in a form for whatever God's agenda is. There's no difference between the sexual procreative organ and your nose, for all as I care. It is only after we start looking at subjective reality, thus giving it interpretations or whatever we feel about it, then all of a sudden, this is important, this is weird, this is arousing, this is whatever it is. I always say to young people, you want to solve the problem of Shmir Seinaim, learn anatomy, learn biology. It's very simple. I'll tell you what that muscle is for. You really want to know? Okay, you look, das verstehe ich. It's a counterbalance for pregnancy. Gendik. Was Chapstei Spilus, you know what I mean? You look at it as anatomy and as a biology, you're doing well. The problem is we don't do that. We always don't live in Chachma. We live in some la-la land. It's us and Alice. And she had a mushroom. We don't even have a mushroom. You know what I mean? We go down the rabbit's hole and we're together with the mad tea party over there. We're not living in an objective reality. It's really modern, to say the least. So what happens when he suddenly hears God? He hears God. If you look at the source that's in front of you, Yishmud Kol Hashem Elokim. Now it goes back. Oh, they suddenly heard Hashem Elokim. See, beforehand it was Elokim, Elokim, Elokim. Now when it comes to Pasuk, in Pasuk Ches, Yishmud Kol Hashem Elokim, they don't see it normally, but all of a sudden, oh, where's this coming from? Is this something foreign to us now? It's very, 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 very frightening. This is what I was. I remember this clearly. I don't see it anymore, and all of a sudden it's coming to haunt me. What do? You're in trauma. What do you do in trauma? It's very simple. You hide from yourself. You go down the rabbit's hole. And that's what they did. What did they do? They hid. What do you think? This is children. They're playing hide and seek with God. What does it mean that they were hiding? It means to say that psychologically they couldn't stand up to God. They lost all sense of stature. They realized they had lost everything within their barely 3 hours old, and they lost everything. How can I stand up to Shem Elokim with now that's not a natural way of seeing it, now some far distant memory that this is what's happening here. I can't stand up to it. This is out of my cosmos. That voice of that Shem Elokim as well, Ayeka, where are you? What does that mean? Goodness sakes. He doesn't answer. It means in Yiddish they say, Wie hältst du? Where are you holding? What Blatt Gemara are you holding? Ayeka. Where is the you, brother dear? What happened to the you that was beforehand, which saw objective realities of Yud Kei Vav Kei Elokim, and now all of a sudden you barely see Elokim. What you see is an apple and a tin, I don't know what. You don't even see the physics of a form. Now you look at the body and you're ashamed. He deteriorated so fast from the peak of philosophy to kindergarten within 5 minutes. Says, but he remembered it vividly. He recognizes Yud Kei Vav Elokim, but he realized it's far, far from it. It's a very painful experience. Maybe if a person loses his mind, never doesn't remember anything, so he can live in the bliss of ignorance. What happens if you remember that you were sharp and you knew Kol HaTorah Kula, and then all of a sudden you can't remember? I remember I don't know how to do it anymore. It's agony. It's agony. He doesn't understand why he's living. And he says, where am I? Where are you? And he says, well, I'm scared because I am nude. I'm living in a subjective reality. I can't stand up to the glaring truth of creation. So then God talks to him. You know what he does to him? He's like a very good psychologist. He says, first of all, let's understand what happened here. And then what he does is he basically explains to him, what is the situation of your existence now? Different. Whatever happened, happened. Whatever was. Let's try to identify what the situation is now. Well, the situation now is that basically talking to the woman, once upon a time when you people were objective people and living with Yud Kei Vav Kei Elokim, all the souls wanted to come down to this world because here there's big milas of living in Olam Hazeh and then seeing God in Olam Hazeh. But now I can't trust you. The souls don't trust you. God knows what life you're going to rear them in and what chinuch you're going to give them and how they're going to succeed. So he tells Eve, something that the neshamas don't want to come down to the gufim anymore. So it's going to be a lot of tsar later. They don't want to be here. Mamish, we have to push them to come down. So this is the situation you understand. You're now in a situation where your body and your soul and ruchnius are at odds with each other. It's because of that you're going to die. It's not a punishment. It's a reality. The soul is basically now somewhat in opposition to the bodily instincts, and it can't stay there forever. I'm still keeping it going because I want the world to happen, but understand it can't be forever. So death is not a punishment. Death is simply explaining, like a decent psychologist or psychiatrist sometimes Well, this is the situation. Let's recognize where we're at. Let's not overdo it. Let's not underestimate it. Let's understand where we're holy. You Nebuchadnezzar Rishon, the Adama wanted to give itself to you because you were going to see the fruit of the land as through the prism of Yud Kei Vav Kei Elokim, and you were thus going to use it for godly purposes. You weren't going to eat because you basically want, I don't know what, taivas. You're going to eat for nutrition. And nutrition was in order to have a balanced life, in order to do Ratzon Hashem. So, of course, the fruit of the land will yield fruit and vegetables to give themselves to you. But now, who trusts you? Most people don't live with the Ratzon of, I want to eat just for nutrition. That's A. That would be true. Most of the nourishing food at fast food places wouldn't exist. No one's eating for nutrition. They're eating the Malas Tavasam. And even when they eat, you think they're eating because they want nutrition, energy in order to do functional good things. So of course they don't want to give themselves to you. So these are not oinshim. This is describing the reality where the world of Ruchnius, the world which is supposed to be a kli for Merkava to the Shekhinah, does not trust man. The souls don't trust Eve. The earth does not trust man. And ultimately, him and his soul are at odds, and therefore they must separate. That's what he's doing. What does he do after that? After he says, well, what are you wearing? You're wearing a bunch of leaves? There's no dignity in that. That's just functional clothes. I want you to have dignity in your new world. Don't feel lost. Don't say, it's a bidi eved. Some people ask me, is this the chatchila or bidi eved? All of existence is what it is in the given reality it is. You are now in this situation. History will take us here. Yes, this is now the situation humanity is in. This is the b'di'evet, this is the chatchila. So what do? I'm going to give you good, beautiful clothes. He's going to give them custom oil. He's going to give them very nice leather clothes. And the Gemara said the clothes are called the covet. Mani mechabdusa. What gives a person stature? The clothes. Ask all these rabbis that wear these Prince Alberts. What are they doing? They're trying to get stature through having a split back and whatever it be. I told you, I call it my ambulance. Door open to the back and a sick man inside. Okay, so this is this is what it is. Stature. But God gave him stature. Literally, Lord the tailor gave him some beautiful leather clothes. What's he doing here? He assesses the reality they're in. They shouldn't live in La La Land. And now he's to give them stature. This is now where you're at. This is your challenge. Let's empower you. What has he done here, God? He's let man not fall listlessly into depression. Rather, he has pointed out the new challenges due to the new situation, has empowered him and ennobled him. Yeah, he's giving him stature. And then he says, well, Yingale, this is a world of perfection, this Gan Eden. You're not here. Now you've got to go out into the real world and you have to, with who you are and make it a better world. And that's what he does. Taking his leather duds and with this new assessment of reality, man now has a new agenda. And this is what you would call tikkun olam, or tikkun with the whole Metzius. That's what man is supposed to be doing. So this is man. So Adam, post-Eden, is a man which has an acute memory of Yud Kei Vav Kei Elokim, but somehow it's only a memory. It's not the way he sees things. But for Adam, because he's very ennobled and he is Yitzhak of Shakadosh Baruch Hu, has a very good memory of that Yud Kei Vav Kei Elokim. Excuse the expression, it's a cross that he bears, but he doesn't run away from the Yud Kei Vav Kei. There's a tension there, but he doesn't run away from it. The memory of those shivrei luchos, of that knowledge, of that life, it's painful to think where I was, but he remembers, wow, that was a good time. I lost it. He feels bad about it. Let's try to get it again. He goes through history, but he doesn't run away from it. This lasts for 2 generations. Now think about Enosh. Enosh is a young man growing up in the house of Shais. Grandfather Adam is very much alive. And you know what I mean? The idea that God is a vivid reality, not just an act of faith, is vivid and real. He looks into the closet and he asks the granddaddy, "Hey, who tailored those beautiful leather suits?" Or he says, "The Lord, the tailor." You know what I mean? God did it. It's like saying God had his house slippers in the house. So for Adam, that's a beautiful memory. But for a kid not living with that, living in a broad world, which, you know what I mean, Elohim is better than what we see, because what we really see is our subjective desires. This becomes a guilt trip. It's like living, excuse me, those who with your schwieger, with your mother-in-law the whole time. You know what I mean? She's always checking out whether things are nice and perfect. It's like living with Rav Soloveitchik. Could you imagine living with Rav Soloveitchik? I mean, it's impossible. He was a brilliant man, but he had very little patience for anything mediocre. And if he acted normally, so to speak, what would you do? He would tell you about your intelligence quotient. He wasn't very, he was pretty rough. Be honest. Ask his son, Chaim. Don't ask him, because what he has to say, no one wants to hear. Okay? But I say, yeah, not easy to live with a person like that. Very hard. It creates animosity. It creates resentment. Why do we have so many people, children of Talmidei Chachamim, but somehow they resent it, and they do the opposite of what their parents do? Because even for the parents, it's a burden somehow. So for the children, it's resentful. Well, this is what happens here. All of a sudden, Enosh feels that this Yudke Vavke stuff, which is the back of my head, I'd like to kick it out of my consciousness. I'd like to kick it out of my consciousness. So what do I do to kick it out of my consciousness? Literally, Amor Lakel Surmi Many, walk away from it. Now, here's a big yesod you have to know. The Rambam writes in Moreh Nevuchim, and the Ramban concurs with this in his Pirush on Iyov, Perik Lamed Zayin. The God's interaction with man is totally dependent on the amount of how man lives with God consciousness. If you think of him, if you see him in everything, then he's with you constantly. If you rarely think of him, he doesn't really live in your consciousness, then you really don't have that much Hashgacha Pratis. People think we all have Hashgacha Pratis. The Rambam and Ramban write it explicitly, not emes. It's totally it depends on the midah that you're davek in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Ramban explains this at length, and also Rambam. The Ramban's on the pasuk of Ledavka Boy. There's a mitzvah to davek in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So people think it's, we sing some kind of a soul-stirring song and we'll have a malka with a kumzitz, with a bonfire. This is called Dveikus Ababa Maisa. This is for, I hate to say what, and I don't want to talk about it. This is mamish moitzi divrei Torah ledivrei havai. It's a ziyuf haTorah. Dveikus state the Raman, a person who lives with a constant awareness of shivisi havaya lenegdi sami. How many people do you know? Mekayim, the first Ramah in Shulchan Aruch. Shivisi havai yudke vavke is what I see in front of my eye constantly. I try to relive that which Adam lost. I'm striving to do that. I heard from my Rebbe of Simchas Zisl that Rebbe Zalman Meltzer, the Baal Even HaAzel, before he would drink a glass of water, he would, in his mind, meditate to see the Shem Yudke Vavke on the glass. That's called the Dovka Boy. You understand? These type of people, they have constant Hashgacha Pratis, because if you think of God, God thinks of you. But if you don't think of a God, you put him in the back burner, and he's good for Ne'ilah and Kol Nidra, or a few other things, or sometimes when things are bad, you scream out and kill him. Okay, then that's exactly how much he thinks of you. And that's what he said, that actually that not everybody has Hashgacha Pratis the whole time. I know this is not commonly learned. We discussed this in past years. We saw the sugya inside, but it's a portion of the Rishonim. Until the Baal Shem Tov, this was normative halacha. From Baal Shem Tov and further, they switched it around. Somehow they created a whole new religion. What can I tell you? Baruch Hashem, I say the learned in Volozhin, and I don't know how the Baal Shem Tov's a penny or a nickel. You know what I mean? My Yiddishkeit is that of the Rambam Ramban and Rabbi Seinu HaRishonim. Actually, in the Ari. It's also the Ari and the Ramamipano, and all of them write the same thing. The Tamer Dvaira, Doilim Kubali Tzfat, all said the same thing till the Baal Shem Tov decided there's Ashgachi even for an ant and even for a leaf, and I don't know what, and everything, but everything is Ashgachi Pratis. This is against Rishonim Psukim, and it's against Kisvei Hari, and also against the Baal Tamer Dvaira and the Pardes Rimonim. It's bad news. We get Moshe Cordovero, the greatest Makubal pre-Ari, writes about Richus. That's not true. What can I tell you? But at the end of the day, this is Makubal B'chol Doiris, that God thinks of you to the extent that you think of Him. What they were going to do, they wanted God to get off their cases. We're not going to think about you anymore. Adam, granddad, he thinks about you and aspires for that to come back to be the way he sees things. But he still knows he thinks about you and aspires to you. For us, this idea of living with a Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, which is not our natural way of living, creates major mental tension. We don't want it. So we're not going to think about him. What are we going to do? Well, let me tell you what they're going to do. They're very religious. And they realize that God runs the world. He created the world. And normally when you see a horse, you say, you know what this is? This is God energy expressed in a horse. And this reminds us constantly about a God that we're not comfortable with. So you know what Dorish Enosh did? The Medrash says they were oisig ba'arboas kalayim. They tried to make hybrids. They didn't want to see natural creation. They wanted to see man-made creation. But instead of having a horse or a donkey, they would put them together and make a mule. This would not be the natural world of God. It's like saying, this goes back to the old times in America in the 60s. They had polyester suits, knits. I remember them. Okay, who has a polyester shirt today? Cotton, right? But once upon a time, polyester was a big deal. They were polyester people. Why? Because cotton to them meant natural creation. For them, that meant Yud-Kei Vav-Kei. And they were going to be Marba B'Kalayim in order that but the world they see should constantly remind them of a creator. Should remind them about man-made reality, of man's ingenuity. That's yes. It's a celebration of man and trying to walk away for them. Think of the beauty of this. They were so profoundly religious because they were so close to creation that for them, science was one big advertisement of a creator. They saw creation. Ma Rabu Masech Hashem. That creator is pressure on my heart. Because if it's a creator, it's his agenda. I'm not comfortable with it anymore because I want pleasure. I want subjective reality. This is infringing on me. I don't want to think about him. And if I won't think about him, he won't think about us, and he'll leave us. He'll leave us. You know how God reacted? Sweet friends, I ain't leaving you. You either behave or I drown you. You're not going to kick me out. And that's what the Medrash says, that they told Amru Lakel, Sur Mimenu, leave us. What do you mean leave us? How can you make God leave you? By stop thinking about him, he naturally will walk away. But when he sees the world by large not wanting to walk, that's going to undermine the purpose of creation, he puts man back into place. And that's the Mabul of Dervish Enosh. This is what happened. The Rambam. Now let's just see how far this went. Man, there was a flood of Derish Enosh, and a third of the populated area was drowned. Did it help? No. Look carefully of where man ended. Well, you can go to the second page that we have. It's a Bereshis Perik Vav Pasuk Aleph. Vayike Ichel Adam LaRoiv Al Pnei Adama. when there were a lot of people, they were multiplying in that area. Where was this whole place? This was all Kidmas Eden. Doesn't say here they moved to Brazil. Okay, just as Olam, Shlishal Olam means the Mediterranean. When the Gemara says, for example, the Kala Meimos Sheba'olam, all the rivers of the world are Nizoinim min Apras. It's Nafkamina La'alacha for mikvos. They come from the Euphrates. Now, goodness sakes, anybody know the globe? Do you really think the Colorado River is nurtured by the Euphrates? You know what the Euphrates is? It's North Iraq, southern Armenia. You really think that the Rhine is nurtured by the Euphrates? Hello? Does anybody think that? I mean, maybe undercurrents, maybe we fight. You know what I mean? You really think the great Mississippi is nurtured by the Euphrates? So what does it mean? If there's floods there, it's going to be possible mikvahs along the way. The Teretz we're talking about the inhabited world of the Tanoim and Amoraim of that period. Yeah, they all lived in Iraq, Iran, etc. And therefore, that area, the highest rivers was the Euphrates, and that nurtured all the tributaries. I hope this is so pashut I don't have to say, but Nebuchadnezzar Aleinu, people think I don't know what. Chazal were intelligent people. They weren't rebelach. Okay? So that's what it means. When it says Kala Olam, it means the inhabited world of our circle, where we are. So when it said there was a flood of the whole world, I always ask, why would God want to drown, the Yellow River in China? I mean, were there people there? Did they know about? Did they have email to know about the chatoim of people living in Kidmat Eden? No. Why do you think he drowned them? Who says he drowned them? Who says there's anybody there? He didn't drown them. What do you mean? It says Vayimach es kol yakum. That means the inhabited world of the people of the Bible, just like all the rivers of the world of the Euphrates. Vayimach es kol yakum. The Gemara says there was no Mabul in Eretz Yisrael. Isn't that part of Kol HaYikum? Yeah, because those type of people didn't live in Eretz Yisrael. I just want to put this on the table, and this is normative Judaism for people who think. We'll answer a lot of questions by simply thinking carefully. So what happens here, there were a lot of people growing up in this area. Where is this area? It's where Adam went. Where did he go? Well, literally, if you ever read Steinbeck, east of Eden. That's where they went, right? Kidmas Eden, east of Eden. Literally, you understand where the mucker of that good old book is. East of Eden, that's where they went, because that was exactly where the Dor HaMabul was living, and that's exactly where the Dorish Enish was living, east of Eden. If you know that Eden is basically Iraq, think east of Eden, you're talking about, at the best, you're talking the area around India, or rather Pakistan. That was inhabited at the time, east of Eden. If you understand Eden being by the great rivers over there, well, look at your map, see exactly where the great rivers are, the Pras, etc., as brought down in the Chumash. Go east of that, that's where the people were. Now you know what we're looking at. Kidmas Eden. Okay, I would call it basically this, what you would call Asia Minor. That's what this would be. That's what they were. Okay? So we know what happens to them. And they had Banos Yuladulahem, well, there were a lot of people, and they all had daughters. Now look carefully at the next pasuk. By Yeru Bnei Elohim, I'm going to translate this accurately according to Rashi, the elite, the sons of the I would say the Cabot Lodges, people, the good Harvard boys or Yale boys that live in Boston. The elite. By you, Bnei Elohim, and the elite, the fellows that go to Eton and Cambridge, okay? As Bnei Adam, they saw the girls of the simple man equals, the village girls. Ki Taiba saying they good. You know what that means? They good? You ever be in a locker room? Locker room language. She's a 10, she's an 8, she's a 6. So you're not talking about her intelligent quotient. You're rating her physicality. You're looking at her as a chepsa, not as a gavra. You are describing her as something which is good for us. They objectified the young ladies. That's what this pasuk say. The elite saw the common girls, and they saw them in an objectified way. This is the end result. When you run away from Yudke Bavke, even as a memory, and you're totally stuck within a world of, so to speak, of subjective feeling, your subjectivity loses control, and then you become looking at people as objects to satiate your desires and not as people. So what did they do, these people? This is the end result of the Dor Ashel Enosh. What did they do? The pasuk says, "Vayikitova Huseina." Oh man, they good. So what happens? Vayikulahem Nashim. They took themselves women. Mikoil Asher Bochar, from whatever they chose. Now you have Rashi on that. I quoted the Rashi. Look at the Rashi, where Rashi says what that means. Af Bu'ulas Baal. They couldn't care less if she was married. What's the difference? She's here for me. Tova Huseina. So why do I care if someone else has her? Af Hazochar. So there was adultery, or rather wife napping. There was homosexuality, va'behema, and bestiality. That's what happened to Dereshel Enosh, starting with some kind of a tension between thinking about religion, which was not in a natural way, or not presented in that. It was obsessive, oppressive, running away from an oppressive sense of Judaism. You ended up literally, I don't want to say off the derech, all the way to subjectivity of people, and therefore objectifying people. You ended up in the pit of what? Of homosexuality, which today is normative, and bestiality, which will be normative. It all starts because you said lakel sur mimenu. The avera was not an avera of taiva and arayis. The type of the arayis are the natural outcome of a world devoid of God. A world devoid of God equals the thing that man's basically agenda is that what he makes and what he creates. Man creates a world of subjective imagination. That's what it is. It's nurtured by man's will and want to control reality through his imagination and not to be restricted by some objective knowledge. Just as we eat things which are the head not healthy, we don't want to be restricted from it. We just don't think that it's going to cut off 5 years of our lives. It does. But we choose to live in La La Land in order to enjoy ourselves in our subjective reality. This is the end result of paganism. So paganism starts with a natural reality. What would have been the solution to paganism? The solution to paganism would have been if they would have found such a way of lessening the tension and creating more of the belief in oneself and the aspirations, just as God ennobled and enabled Adam by telling him the situation and giving him stature. That somehow did not go further to the grandson of Adam, which is Enosh, and this is where the world fell. It's very reminding me of what's happening today in many Orthodox circles. The failure of education, of making something religion not oppressive and demanding, but something which is meaningful and can even give you a sense of self which is beyond the trivial and the temporal, is not what's happening. And that's why there's a lot of young people falling off and saying, walk away from me, God. I don't want to think about you. And that's what we do. That's why davening is not davening. That's why I don't want to go into it. What do? We create artificial kumsitzes and things like that to make us happy. But at the end of the day, it's a terrible struggle. This is the number one. Dervish or Enosh. Now, what exactly? Now, we just described why he did it. It's very simple. It's very clear from the movement from Adam Arish through Enosh of why he did it. Let's see what he did. So this is Rambam and Hilchos Avodah Zarah. You have it in your sheets. Where the Rambam describes it, I will read selected pieces. Bimei Perik Aleph Hilchos Avodah Zarah Halacha Aleph Bimei Enosh, at the times of Enosh Tov Bnei Adam Ta'ud Dola. People made a mistake. And the wisdom of the wise men of that generation suddenly went lost. He was also Minitayim. Let's understand the Lashon of the Rav. Does he mean to say this was purely a theological mistake? I find it hard to believe, because Enosh was trained by Adam. And he could have asked his questions to Adam. And Adam was Yitzir Kapusha Kadosh Baruch Hu. He knew exactly what to answer. It is obviously that the answers that Adam gave did not relieve the pressure that Enosh had, and therefore he chose to make a type of religion which would be palatable. Many times when you have truths which are overwhelming, you choose to create another truth. I don't want to give examples, but we have it constantly in the world we live in, which we make every b'di'evid into a lachatchila. We find some odd rishon or some odd medrash which somehow fit with what we want anyway. You know, I find the rabbi which will tell me the right thing. And this is the toast. We don't openly say, I don't want to do it. No. We're nice and frum. But we say, I need a rabbi which will help me connect to my religion. So that's the mistake. Yeah, you can call it a mistake. But psychologically, it's a rebellion. So what happens here? What happened? Amru, they said, God did create the celestial bodies through which he leads the world. They understood that the different spheres and stars, they believed in astrology. They are the tools which God used to run the world. Well, we know that definitely the moon is control of tides, for example. They understood that the stars and the whole system over there were basically tools of God to run the world. It says v'noslim b'morim, which is an interesting concept. He put them on top. Is that actually true? Well, we now know what the solar system looks like. They're not on top of you, they're parallel to you, for goodness sakes. But from the subjective point of man, it's above you. Yeah, it's true. It's above you. So for man's understanding of science at the time, God put them above you. Now, when I see the star above me, does that give me any theological meaning? No. These people, again, creation was an advertisement of God, and they understood if God put them above me, they're telling me they're more important than me and they have more stature than me. Wow. See how profound they were, that even the bodies of their solar system was literally messages of God. And they said, well, the stars and the moon and the sun are above us. This means they're above us also in their metaphysical stature. V'chilek lem kavod. He gave them the honor of being above us. V'heim shamoshim amshamshim lefonav. Here was a theological mistake. They didn't see the bodies as a hammer and a chisel as tools. They saw them as servants, noblemen, which they serve God, and they are an intermediate between God and us. That was a mistake. But what brought that mistake? Why did they look for that mistake? Why didn't Adam's explanation enough? Because what he's offering us is saying it's all God, and that's just a hammer. It means I'm stuck with God awareness. I don't want it. There's tension. So what did he say? Therefore, we should praise them and to beautify them. Isn't it perfect? And this is what God wants. God wants us. Let me say what this is. They created a theology. They said, listen, Let's get this straight. We can't have a direct relationship with God. He's overwhelming. But we can have a direct relationship with these middle people, these bodies. They're not overwhelming. They're not a source of creation. They don't tell us what to do. They're just the intermediate. Now, what we'll do is, and I'll give the example. Can you imagine if you had to, you're a simple guy from, I don't know where, someplace in Oklahoma. You came to the big city. You guzzle beer and go to bowling alleys, and all of a sudden the president of the company, the 30th floor, calls you in. I like you. Come to you'll be in the office next to me, and I'll constantly be in conversation with you. The guy goes nuts, for goodness sakes. I don't know. This guy drinks single malts. He wears black ties, plays golf. I want a beer and a hero sandwich. I want to go to the bowling alley wearing torn jeans. I'm sure get a So what does he tell the boss? He tells the boss, listen, you're so important and I'm so small. I don't think you should want this relationship. What I will do is I will honor my department head. He's on the 7th floor. He's a beer guzzler. He's a bit better than me. And he's actually honoring you by honoring the person you empowered. But with him, I can have an ongoing relationship. And here's the theology of way of not having a relationship with the source of truth, therefore demanding accountability, etc. Rather having a relationship not with the source, no accountability, but this is the fellow which will basically feed me and take care of me. What have we done? Basically walked away from having to deal with the tension of dealing with a God which demands truth and demands consistency and demands awareness. We've walked away. We've turned our back from that possibility. I'll deal with the middleman. And that's what he says. And then what do I do to make myself feel comfortable? It is true that God wants me to honor them. Because once I understand they're an entity, they're middlemen, they're his servants. So the king wants you to honor also the nobleman. He doesn't deal directly with the serfs. He deals with the nobleman. The nobleman will deal with the serfs. It's beyond his dignity to deal with the serfs. And this theology developed. And this is the development of Avodah Zarah, starting simply by saying, let's keep God out of our heads and focus totally on the middlemen. After a while, the Rambam continues, people even forgot that there was a king. And they only thought about the middlemen. They didn't even think that there's something above it anymore. And the name Yud-Kei Vav-Kei was forgotten. We know that beginning of Sefer Shmos, that God introduced themselves as Yud-Kei Vav-Kei. They didn't know what it was. God's source of creation wasn't there. At that stage of the game, we understood creation is and was, and there's no creator, but there is a certain energy or certain bodies which govern our lives. And we must appease them because we want them to bring the rain. We must appease them. If not, they'll throw thunderbolts at us. That's Avodah Zarah. Stopping to think about creator and creation, which that's what demands you to say, well, if you were created for God for a purpose, it's got to be his purpose. No, that's overwhelming. So what you do is you walk away from that whole area, and slowly but surely, it's a very interesting digression. First, I understand this creator, but I don't want to think about it. As we mentioned before, and the less I think about him, the less he thinks about me, I'll have some kind of independence. It deteriorated, went further to a situation that not only did they think about God, they stopped knowing that there was a creator. And that's what happened. And it happened basically, as the Rambam says, that basically all of monotheism was going under. There was nobody, literally, that was aware of a creator until Abraham started. Until Avram came around, no one thought in ideas of primary reason for creation. They probably believed in the Big Bang or something. God, it always was. Major Greek ideas of Kadmuta Olam. The creation is. Doesn't need a creator. The laws of science always were. What have you done? This is the world you live in today, for goodness sakes. A existence devoid of a reason. Because it always was. We create some kind of way of some kind of a scientific reason which doesn't demand intelligence or demand accountability. Even to say intelligent design that doesn't fit well in the East or West board of America. That's only good for the red states. The blue states don't like intelligent design. If you go to the proper schools, the great schools of the East, okay, that doesn't happen. That will happen in the University of Iowa. It won't do well in Harvard and Yale or Princeton, or definitely not UCLA or Berkeley. God help me. Okay, you know what I mean? This is what happened. And then once again, it almost went totally down again after when the Jews went into Egypt. Once again, everything sunk. All the Nefesh Hashasa B'choron went. And except for Shevet Levi, all the Jews went back to paganism. Rama writes this in Perikaf until finally God saved us and brought us out of Egypt and reintroduced himself. He reintroduced himself through Yossi. Hey, you don't know Yud Kei Vav Kei because of Adam Rishon. That went with Enosh. You don't know Yud Kei Vav Kei because of Avram Avinu. Sorry, that went in Egypt. The only reason we know Yud Kei Vav Kei, we live with a God awareness, is because of Yitzias Mitzrayim, because of the Esra Makos, and finally the Dor Midbar. That's why. That's the basis of our religiosity. So this is the story of Dorish Enosh, man running away. It's very important to us today. I mean, I know I work in Chinuch, and I never see also young kids. I know people that come counseling. We have to learn how to. They run away because of tension. Because religion has been felt as something. It's almost like this big finger from heaven saying no, 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 no. There's nothing positive in it. Now, the truth is not to make parties and to kumsitzes. These are very sweet. It's better, but that's not going to solve anything. Truth is, one has to have profound religious training to understand how religion really gives meaning and purpose. And that's why you want to do it. Now, that takes serious training and serious teachers. God help us. I don't know, maybe somebody one day would. I had a student that wanted to become the going to chinuch. I told him, do me a favor, don't go into chinuch, go into business. What are you talking about? That's not for you. Finally, he picks me up at the airport once in my old days when I used to travel. He says, Rebs, I'm going into chinuch. He says, oh, stop it already. So he says, yeah, I am running 3 nursing homes. I'm going to be the president of the Board of Education. Oh, says that's where you're going to make a difference. He's running 3 nursing homes. He owns them by now. And basically, he's going to decide the agenda, the curriculum of the schools. That's making chinuch. Maybe you were able to take all the people that should be there, take them out and bring people that should be there in there, and teach Judaism in a way that we should go back to Mekayim Shivisi Hashem L'Negdi Summit. So this is what I wanted to learn today of Dersha Enosh. Dersha Enosh is a reaction to the tensions of religion, the tensions of God awareness. The solution is, can you make that with meaning and purpose? And sometimes, no pain, no gain. People do work out, and they do have, it's painful, or you diet, and that can be very painful. Okay, and let me tell you, it's worth it, and it's worth it. Key of education is making this something worth it. Have a great one. See you guys in 2 weeks.
Thank you, Ravi.
Bracha v'atzlacha.
Thank you.
Thank you.